All right, guys, here we go. Welcome to the Google Data Analytics course. So I'm still working my way through it. Where are we at now? It is November 5th. So look back to the old videos and you'll see that I am slugging through this rather slowly. And to give you a sense, my buddy, Mati, who is living in Argentina, um, actually he was in Denmark and then now he's back in Argentina. Him and I started this course together and he finished it probably within about 2 months. And so you can see that I'm taking quite a lot longer, but I'm also doing a lot of other things on the side. So it's okay. Like it's taking longer than I expected, but at the same time, I am using some of the information that I learned here to explore some of the data analytics concepts that I'm really excited about and that I'm interested in. So just as a reminder, this is the Google Data Analytics Professional Certificate that I'll get at the end of this entire course set. There's about 8 courses in total. It's put on by Coursera and it is offered by Google. So if I go here and click on the courses, it'll break it down. Again, the first one I did was foundations. And then the second one was asking the right questions to make a data-driven decision. And then preparing the data so that I can explore it and know what I'm going to do. And always, if you have a hard time knowing what this is all about, and for my physician audience, obviously, imagine you have a bunch of diabetic patients and you have a ton of data on them. You know when they get hospitalized, you know when they went into DKA, you know what medications they used, you know what their A1C level was. Imagine you have this huge spreadsheet of data about this patient and you know everything from their entire health journey. So you got patient A, patient B, patient C. Imagine you got 2 million in this giant spreadsheet and you know what their A1C level is, you know what complications they had, what amputation they had. And so imagine all this data on a patient and on multiple patients, and you need to prepare the data before you can even explore it. You need to process it. So for example, somebody might be missing a hemoglobin A1C level. Well, if it's empty and you're trying to get the average of A1Cs for these 1 million patients, if there's an empty cell, that's going to be a problem. So that's kind of what you're learning here in processing the data from dirty data, which is like a bunch of data dump onto your lap as a clinical data analyst, to cleaning the data and making it so that you can work with it. The next one is analyzing data to answer questions. So this was something I finished, and actually I thought this was really interesting. What conclusions can you make? Like you want to analyze the data, right? But there's a question that you want to answer. For example, do the patients with lower A1Cs have better outcomes? Do the patients in the A1C level of 7 to 9 have fewer hospitalizations? Obviously, we know the answers to these questions as physicians, but stakeholders or businesses or investors may not. And so that's why they give this data to us to analyze. The next one was share the data through art of visualization. So this was a lot about learning Tableau, which is a rather simple platform where you can put in all the data and create a beautiful visualization, and not just visualization, but an interactive place where stakeholders, people who to whom this data matters, they can interact with the data based on what you've created, of course, right? Because you want to put in only the important pieces of data in there for them to sort of play around with it and then be able to manipulate things like, oh, what about only in January? Oh, what about only in 2019? Or what happened after this law got passed and, you know, insulin became free, and did the patient's outcome change in any way? And then what I'm kind of going through now is data analytics with R programming. I think I've dabbled in different computer programming languages over the years, and I always liken it to just learning a new language. That's all it is. It's nothing fascinating about it. It's nothing really complicated. You don't have to have an engineering mindset to be able to do it these days. There's a lot of reference material for you to look through stuff. For example, here in my data analytics, I have an R. I have a bunch of bookmarked locations for R, so I can learn about R Studio. There's tutorials, so I can look certain things up. Like I want to know how to work with certain data modeling. I want to just review data basics in R. I want to review all the different things that I want to do with R. For example, I want to create a certain visualization in R. How do I do that? What was it? Oh, that's right. It was this syntax that I use, this function that I use. And those are all pretty straightforward. I think once you just become familiar with it, you figure it out. And in fact, this is what I'm going through right now. This is data analytics with R. I am on week 5. And if I click in here, you'll see that there's only 5 weeks. So I'm on the last section of it. When I click on week 5 itself, you can see here, this is what I'm going through. So this is like the markdown now for R. And then Jupyter Notebook, which I don't know anything about yet. And there's a test at the end of each one of these practice quizzes until you get to the final quiz, which is actually something you have to take. So you can always skip these. And I think my buddy who got through this really fast obviously skipped the majority of the videos, skipped the readings, and really just went straight to the practice. And you could do that, and I think that's another really effective way to get through it. But for me, this stuff is so out of my comfort zone and so new to me. I'm really actually excited to go through it one by one. And then, all the course information, everything here is available. I'm not going to go through all of that. The final thing, which is Data Analytics Capstone, it's a completed case study. So they'll give you everything you need to do a final case study, to put everything you have learned into use and actually enter it into their little platform, and it's going to test you. Basically, it's going to say, oh, okay, you passed, and so then you'll get your final certificate. So that's the data analytics course in a nutshell. I'm actually about to sit down and finish this section, this section here all the way through week 5, and then I'll be ready for the last one. So I'm kind of excited to finally get there. The other thing I wanted to show you guys is, in fact, there are so many great job opportunities when you search. So I did a search on LinkedIn Jobs. I went to LinkedIn Jobs and I looked up clinical terminology. I did clinical data science. I did clinical data analytics, medical data analytics. I did medical terminology. I put all these terms in as a search for both LinkedIn Jobs. So you go to LinkedIn, then you click on Jobs, JOBS/search, or you can go to Indeed and you can do the same thing, click clinical terminology, and I always put in remote because it is important to me that I do remote work. And I wanted to highlight this one particular job that came up that I thought was kind of interesting. So this is a clinical terminology specialist. It's done by Closed Loop AI. Closed Loop AI is a rather interesting business that takes all of the data from multiple different businesses that give them that data, and then they create certain metrics and analytics in the healthcare field. So they might do specific metrics for a particular patient, their risk score for certain things, their disease prediction for certain things. So it's really interesting that they're taking clinical stuff and AI and combining it into something that is actionable for healthcare institutions. So the offer here is somewhere between 100 to 130,000, which is great for me. This is a mid to senior level position. What does that mean? Well, an entry or junior level position is kind of exciting because there's less demand on you when you see it here. When it's listed here as a junior level or entry level, it's exciting because there's less demand on you and you get to learn from a lot of people. They're likely going to hire you for having the right attitude. Does that make sense? And then they're going to teach you the skills. So they want the right person whom they can train really well. That's a junior entry level. Of course, you have to have some background. A mid to senior level position is somebody who has a lot of skill, and the attitude matters, but they're looking for a certain outcome. So it's really important to them that this person can kind of orchestrate a few things. And then a senior level, it's like your skill is a given. That's no doubt. You should have that 10 to 20 years of experience. They're going to really look for attitude and skill, right? So this is a little bit more skill. If you're looking for senior level, this person's like basically an executive, right? They're president, they're executive officer of some certain position, and they're managing a lot of people. So this company has 11 to 50 employees. It is in the information technology industry, kind of health informatics, right? There's some connections that I have here, and they're actively recruiting. It looks like so I submitted an application. They reviewed my application a few days ago, and they got back to me already. And here they go on to talk about what closed loop is. I'll let you read it for yourself. If you guys want to look it up, it's clinical terminology specialist, closed loop AI. You can always click on closed loop AI and it'll take you to the actual business, and it'll take you to all the recent job postings if you click on it. So if I do closed loop AI, the business comes up, and I can go to the people who work there. So I can look through everybody who works there, and I can just reach out to them and say, hey, look, what you're doing sounds really interesting. Would I be a good candidate for your team? These are my skills. And imagine if they didn't post this position and I reached out to them right before they posted this position, they probably would have interviewed me, right? And so the point is, like, go out there and get this, get your application out to people, even if they're not looking for jobs. So then I can go to the actual job postings. And over here, you can see the clinical terminology is the one that I was looking at. I can look and see, okay, what are they looking for? And then about the role, what is it that I do? Highly involved in all facets of closed loops, clinical content strategy, and for ensuring a rigorous approach to creating, maintaining, and curating the growing set of complex features related to clinical conditions, adverse events, health behaviors, quality measures, and episodes of care used to build AI-based solutions. So you're really involved on the clinical side of this. You will work closely with a diverse team of colleagues, including data scientists, product managers, and marketing and sales leadership, and will have interactions with customers, prospective clients, and business partners. As the ideal candidate, you combine experience and subject matter expertise, strong knowledge of the healthcare system and its evolving landscape, and an innovative and curious perspective that naturally questions the status quo. So what do I need to have? Obviously, I need to have an understanding of how the healthcare system works, but I also need to have a strong clinical knowledge. Again, going back to the clinical terminology. Now, I don't think this description, I don't think is good, but you can't blame them because it is really difficult to put this into words. You need to hire somebody who is an amazing copywriter to get across what this hiring person, it looks like the contact for the job poster is Carol McCall. And so she's the person who either posted this job or is posting this job. And so it is really difficult to get across what is it that they're looking for. But they can kind of give you an idea, a description. What does this business do? What are they trying to achieve? They're trying to get their product to the right clients. That's what this is saying. And they need somebody who can connect the dots, but also work with their different teams, like the product manager, the operations manager, the data scientists, to constantly make improvements on the product so that they can so that they can make the product something that's sellable. So here are some requirements to give you a sense. And I want you to always read this with a huge grain of salt, because remember, this is a obviously successful company. They have multiple employees. They've done amazing things. They've accomplished incredible stuff. They were the winner of CMS challenge. They were awarded like 1.6 million. I mean, this is a company with legit pedigree, right? So they're not going to just hire you based on all these requirements that they wrote here. They're going to hire you because you're the right person for the job. And if they need to, they'll train you in order to get the results out of you that they think they need. So here are the requirements and responsibilities. These are the qualifications. And then they will try to sell you on their company, right? And then there's some, again, more selling, like, hey, look, we do a good job. Our people like us. So first of all, I think it's important to know that they're paying you upwards of $130,000. For a physician, I think that's a great amount of money. Now, sometimes you think that as a physician, you should be compensated the same amount as what you would get paid if you saw patients. That's not true. It shouldn't be that way. The reason is the amount of money you're going to make for all the parties involved is much less in such a role versus a physician. When you're a physician, you're making money for the medical device manufacturer, the pharmaceutical industry, the medical system that's hiring you, CMS, Medicare, Medi-Cal, all of those. So you're making a lot of money. You're in the middle of you're basically getting a tiny percentage of all the money you're making for everybody. Here, you're making a bit of money, but they're actually spending more money on you than they might be making. So it might be an investment in the future. So for you to expect, like, for example, I work in the urgent care right now here in Los Angeles. I make $120 an hour as a board certified family medicine physician who does urgent care. I can't ask for $120 an hour for these guys working full time. It wouldn't make any sense. That's not the amount of money I'm making for these guys. So always try to start at a very rational level, at a sensible level, and know that you can always negotiate up. If you see that your work is much more involved, much more complicated, and you're really doing a lot of good for them, you can always negotiate and improve and ask for more money. Now, I know a lot of physicians are kind of worried because, well, you have student loans and you have a lot of money, that a lot of responsibilities and financial things that you have to meet. But remember, $100,000 to $130,000 that you earn remotely doesn't have to be with you living in California, in Palo Alto, in San Jose, or in Los Angeles. You could also move to Portland, Oregon. You could also move to Guanajuato, Mexico, and still make that money, right? So just remember that. Think outside the box when you're applying for these kind of positions, and remember that there's a lot that you're going to learn and take away from this position and really improve your resume with it. And maybe even, actually, in fact, here they're willing to offer you equity into this business. That's incredible, right? If this becomes a unicorn, if this becomes a really big company one day, you're going to be able to have a absolutely wonderful exit out of this company, or you might stay with them forever, which is also wonderful. So the qualifications here is something in public health, epidemiology, informatics, or bioinformatics, and with a bachelor's degree, 6-year plus relevant experience or master's degree in related health. Now, they didn't say physician, MD, or somebody with a PhD, but in fact, I think the reason they didn't is because they probably didn't think that an MD or DO would know everything, right? They think that the MD DO really just knows the clinical stuff, or that no MD or DO would be interested in working here. Knowledge of clinical and administrative billing data content, including associated interoperability standards, clinical terminology, and administrative code sets, including LOINC, SNOMED, RxNorm, ICD, CPT, and HCPCS. So you may not know these terms, but I assure you that you know every one of these things. In fact, this is a bookmark of mine, but I'm not going to be able to find it right away. So I'm just going to go to the SNOMED website here and give you an idea. All it is, it's clinical terminology. So if I go, I should have just given you guys the bookmark. But basically, it's a huge library of medical terminology, from dermatitis to eczema to diagnostic codes. That's all it is. So it isn't anything that you're not familiar with. RxNorm is the standard for all of the. Let's pull it up. RxNorm is the standard for. Here it is. It's a unified medical language system, the UMLS, for medications. So any medication that is prescribed, whether inpatient or outpatient, the dosages. And so this is an Rx API, which can be pulled in to the system so that you don't have to create everything from scratch. For example, in my previous roles, I was in charge of creating an ontology for, let's say, a pulmonary infection. So I had to put in parenchyma and hemoptosis and shortness of breath, and create synonyms such as dyspnea and shortness of breath and dyspnea on exertion, which is the child of this. That's called the ontology, the child-parent tree of something. But all of that is already done here. So you don't have to do it from scratch. You know what an ICD-10 is. You know what a CPT is. I actually don't even know what this is, but I bet you once I pull it up, I'll know what it is. The Health Common Procedure Coding System. Okay, so procedure coding system, that's all it was. And we know how to code for procedures. Again, sometimes we as physicians are not familiar with these things, but we use it on a day-to-day basis. And I think HCPCS was done by CMS. So anyway. And then knowledge of clinical quality measures such as HEDIS and STARS. Most of us have had to practice under HEDIS measures these days. Demonstrated experience using code sets and taxonomies to craft clinically relevant variables to use in healthcare analysis, epidemiology. So this is maybe something that you don't have an experience in, but again, remember, you want to find out how important this is. This certainly wasn't written at the very top here, right? So these things are usually written in order of importance. So maybe this isn't as strong if you haven't had experience creating clinical terminology, creating ontologies. Strong written and oral communication, I think that's always really important. And the reason this is important is you want to be able to communicate with somebody and understand what they're talking about, be able to repeat it back to them and ask deep, meaningful questions. Now, sometimes you can't do that synchronously, and you might have the type of mind that needs to take a step back, take some notes for yourself, gather your thoughts, and then get back to somebody. There's nothing wrong with that. If they're comfortable hiring somebody like that, they will hire somebody like that. Knowledge of application programming interface. That was the API that I just showed you guys. So being able to interface into their program, into their data sets, their algorithms, demonstrate proficiency in program manipulated data. Yeah, I thought this was interesting. Demonstrated proficiency in programmatic manipulation of data, ideally pandas and Python, experience in R, SAS, and Stata, and willingness to learn pandas. Look, do you need to know Panda? The Panda is a part of R. R is a programming language. Python and Python is a programming language. Do you need to know it? You don't need to know it, but you should be familiar with it. And it's so easy to become familiar with how it works and how things are integrated. And the reason you do, because you probably at some point are going to work with the engineers, right? And the engineer is going to tell you, look, I love the fact that you, Dr. Shori, are creating these clinical vignettes for me, and you're creating these clinical terminology terms and ontologies, but they have to work into R or into Python, which is the programming language I use. And in order for them to fit, we have to change it around a little bit. So you have to be able to understand that this guy's telling you, the engineer, this girl, this guy, is telling you that you need to change the way you create something so that it plays well with my software. That's really all it is. So that's the level of understanding that you have to have. Experience working with data scientists and software engineers and creating ways to scale your work. Ability to thrive in a startup environment, produce high quality output under tight deadlines with minimal guidance. Okay. Being able to work independently, being able to have supervision and while offering supervision, being able to communicate very well. So that's all it is. And this is a wonderful example of a great piece of work that you can do with your medical degree. Obviously, I've already submitted my resume, and I won't share with you guys where I am in the interview phase, but it is the kind of work that I really enjoy. It is the kind of work that I really like. So this would be right up my alley. Now, again, this isn't the only one. I did a search for clinical terminology, and you can see that a different company is looking for a business analyst, somebody who can analyze multiple different businesses and determine based on your expertise. And so this might be a little bit more fintech, like financial stuff, economy stuff. And then here's a senior marketing manager. So you might work in a marketing agency with your clinical experience. This is more of a clinical informatics for USC Medical School. More clinical informatics. And remember, not all of these jobs are going to require you to have a clinical informatics degree. Sometimes the fact that you just understand medicine and communicate the aspects of clinical medicine to somebody is more than enough for you to get this job. Here's another one, clinical informatics specialist, clinical data analyst, and terminologist. And so these are all the jobs that I'm looking at in order to see where it is that I want to go to next, so that I can continue learning what I need to learn to be competitive in this space. And in the meantime, yes, I will continue my data analytics course, because there's a lot that I'm learning from this, and I'll finish it. But after that, I don't think there's a whole lot of other stuff that I'll do. I'll work a little bit through this. I'll go on LinkedIn Learning. I showed you guys that in a previous video. And I'm going to keep focusing on this, because there's a lot of great learnings from project management and having good conversations, critical thinking, communication. These are good things for me to learn, because these are skills that I'll have to take into any business that I go into, whether I'm a consultant or whether I get hired full time, like what this company is looking for, or if I start my own business. So that's it, guys. If you have any questions, remember, you can go to digitalnomadphysician.com. Check out the website. You can send me an email. If you are a physician, by the way, do join me on my LinkedIn group. I recently created a group on LinkedIn. It's only for physicians at this time. So if you are a physician, you can request to join, and I'll let you join. And the nice thing there is we can share things privately and kind of create a good community over there. I think it'll be fun for all of us to hop in there and have some good conversations. That's it, guys. Take care.